Welcome, everybody, to episode 9 of McRae Live. It is Friday, January 24th, 2020. And today I've got my first guest on the show ever, Cecil Laird of the Horror Show YouTube channel. We're going to be talking some Freddy today, Elm Street, Dylan's new Nightmare. It's going to be a fun show. It's going to be a really fun show. I've wanted to get Cecil on, well, I've had him on the channel a couple of times. But when I started doing this show, I knew that there's one guest I wanted to have on for sure. It was Cecil Laird. And Cecil and I are going to have a lot of fun today. Talking some Freddy Krueger and A Nightmare on Elm Street. Cecil.
I am doing well. Thank you very much for having me. And little did you know that, when I saw the way your channel was headed, I saw you were starting to go towards live streams. And so really, I only asked you to be a part of the project so I could be your first guest here. No, I'm delighted to be here. I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to talk Freddy always. Wait, Dave, they're saying they can't hear you now that you brought me up. There we go. All right. Good. We're fixing it. We're fixing it, guys. We're fixing it.
Now you can hear me. Now you can hear me. We can't hear you!
Yeah,
we can't hear you! Turn it up! He's not paying attention! How come he's not paying? Cecil, say something! Okay,
I'm on it, guys. I'm on it.
He's on it. He's on it. That's because I had multiple windows here that I had to pay attention to, and it's fixed. It's fixed! Somebody type that it's fixed! Somebody type it's fixed! Fuck!
Stand down! Everyone, stand down!
Calm down! Jesus! We're good. Let me start that again and say that Cecil Laird of the Horror Show, it's great that you're here. A little bit of a hiccup there, but it's great to have you here. And as I was about to say before he got it was the fact that it's great to have you on as the first guest because I'm moving in that direction, to get more people on the show, and I can yap and talk and you can yap and talk. And I thought, what better than to get two guys who never shut up? So I figured that would be a really good thing to do. You know what I mean? And here we are talking some Freddy, some Elm Street, where the state of the franchise is. I mean, you in many ways are to what I am to Halloween. You are to Freddy and Elm Street. The series and the fine nuances and details inside it out, and of course we're doing a fan film called Dylan's New Nightmare, which is are we allowed to say when the shooting is now? Is that public?
Yes.
Or
no? I did make an announcement in an update to all of our Indiegogo backers that and yeah. By the way, before I give those dates, I would be to Freddy what you are to Michael Myers, were there any sort of updates in the realm of Freddy Krueger? So
that's a good point.
Frankly, I had to just make my own. So that's what I'm doing. No, we're filming from May 25th to the 29th. So that is when we're going to camera. We're going to film the entire project in that time. We've got everyone coming in. I've confirmed everyone's flights and travel arrangements. Nora Hewitt's going to be here. Vince DeSanti's going to be here. Renee Rivas is going to be here to shoot. Of course, Miko Hughes is going to be here. And if a plan that went into action yesterday works out, there will be another announcement that people are going to care about if it works out.
Yeah, and I know what that is, but I can't say it. Or I would be I'd be shot. But anyway, yeah, but no, I agree. I think if it does work out, fingers crossed, it is something that people will definitely find cool.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So let's go back. I mean, let's go all the way back. I mean, you have this YouTube channel, The Horror Show, but let's go way past that. I mean, you've been doing that for what? I think you're into your 6th year now.
We actually are just, I think the 14th was the beginning of our 6th year.
Incredible. Okay, so let's go all the way back to little Cecil in the 80s. And what?
There's never a little Cecil, I don't think. I take your point.
Yeah, you're what? You're 6'3", I think, are you?
Yeah, I'm 6'3", and pushing 3 bills. Unfortunately, right now, that's a big goal of mine, is to lose about 75 of those bad boys.
Making that fan film, directing that movie, you're gonna sweat. You're gonna be out there. You're gonna be working hard. You're totally gonna do it. I believe in you. I believe you can. But let's go all the way back to the 80s. I mean, I know for me, and maybe you've heard me say this, and I've said this a lot, and I'm sure you'll be able to back me up on this too. Not that people don't believe it, but I don't think those of our viewers that might not be old enough to remember the 80s, not that we were teenagers, but we're old enough to remember being young kids growing up through the 80s. And I often say that, Michael Myers was virtually non-existent. And there's reasons for that. It's not because people hated him. It's because between 1981 and 1988, Michael Myers ceased to exist. And in that time, Freddy and Jason were the big baddies they were tearing it up. They were, that's why there's a movie, Freddy versus Jason, right? That's why they were arguably the biggest horror icons, certainly of the slasher genre and certainly of the 1980s. So for me, even though I'm a big Halloween fan and Michael Myers is my thing, it was Freddy that I first got into in probably 84, 85, 86, somewhere in there. Was it like that for you? Where were you as a young Cecil in the 80s when it came to horror? How did you get into it? How did you become emotionally attached to this Fred Krueger guy?
Well, to go into the history of Nightmare on Elm Street, really, I got to Freddy via my first exposure to horror, which was Jaws. And another slasher with many sharp things coming after you. And I don't remember quite how I got first exposed to Freddy, because I was a big fan at the time of like the Up All Night on USA, right, that kind of stuff. That's where I really started to get my first exposure on a regular basis, because I was staying up late enough to see that, and my parents wouldn't know. And frankly, I guess figured I was well adjusted enough to handle it. But once I did get exposed to it, I believe my first exposure was what some might call the sillier Freddy. Or at least when it's starting to get there. I think Nightmare 3 and Nightmare 4 were pretty much the first things that I saw. And then once I was, allowed to actually go to the store and start renting them on my own, I started at the beginning and watched them through. And I, at the time, was just basically a horror sponge. I would go to, I don't know if this might have just been a local chain, but there was a chain called Video Update. And it would have, 3 for 99-cent Tuesdays. And so I would go in and I would get like 9 movies or something on a Tuesday and just raid the horror section. And they had a nice substantial horror section. And I was especially drawn to the ones that had many parts, many parts in the series, right, because I was like, oh, damn, that must mean it's good, So as I was making my way through them, nothing caught my attention the way Freddy did. I liked something that's remained true is I've always liked gore, and you've always been
a big fan of gore.
Big fan of gore. I'll excuse a lot,
but not Clinton or
no, the guy that invented the internet, man. Come on, how would I have a job if not?
Right.
No, but I've always been a gore hound. The Thing is my favorite horror movie of all time. But anything, I forgive a lot when it comes to gore. I like the Laid to Rest movies just because of how good the gore is in them. But, you know, so I liked Jason. And that was actually part of why I wasn't as big a Michael Myers fan, is because they never really leaned heavily on the gore for Michael Myers that much, at least not by comparison to the other two.
Right.
And even by comparison to Chucky, because in Child's Play 2, it gets gory when he gets his arm ripped off and he shoves the knife in, you know. So Freddy was, you know, a gory guy, and he was fun. He was full of personality. My two favorite slashers are Freddy and Chucky, because in my opinion, they have the most personality of any of the slashers out there. They're the most fun to watch. Granted, they might not be as scary at times, but when I still will put Nightmare 2 and Nightmare 1 up against the first Halloween for scare factor, and I think they're equivalent, you know, equals. Halloween might be a technically more proficient horror movie, but on the scare level, I think Freddy even has it over him. So I was on board for that. The makeup is cooler. The glove itself is more unique than a machete or a butcher knife. It's not his makeup isn't just a repainted William Shatner mask or a hockey mask. You know what I mean? There's got to be a level of creativity to Freddy, and there's new iterations with every new installment, and so there's a lot to really like about Freddy. So I glommed onto a lot when it comes to that. So when you compare him versus those other two, Jason and Michael Myers, you know, the big three, as a lot of people consider them.
Right.
For some reason, Leatherface is always left out in the cold. And he like predated most of them. Like, it's funny.
I think that's probably because he didn't have much of a series. He had the first one, and then the second one came years later, and it was a completely, almost a different genre. It was this weird comedy almost, you know what I mean? So I think that's probably why he kind of, you know.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, in total, his installments were more spaced out than a lot. However, it has to be said that his new installments, the remakes and whatnot, are the...
Wait, we've just reconnected. We're back. We are back.
All right.
We just reconnected there. We are back. I'm not sure what happened there. We'll just we'll keep going, and we'll hope that everything remains okay.
Back again. Okay, it didn't seem like it was that long. Okay.
Yeah, it didn't seem like it was that long. Strange fucking thing. It was. It's fixed. It's fixed. Hey, type fixed. Yeah, but we already have 30 of them. We need 48. I love you guys. I'm just busting all your...
That's never going to get old to me, by the way. I absolutely love that.
It's love it. I love all you guys. I love you guys. I'm just yanking your chains.
So yeah, I mean, after that, Freddy was the one that I watched over and over and over again. And that's how I basically got to the point where it's the one thing in horror, that and Chucky are the two things in horror that I can really proclaim myself an expert on. Right. Because I know those movies, all of them inside and out at this point.
Right. And it's not just knowing the movies, which the one thing that impressed me and that I appreciate is as you got older. I mean, it's one thing to know the movies, but you also to be thought of as an expert in a certain franchise, you also have to have an understanding of how things came to be and all the nuances and details of why certain movies are the way they are and why they wrote, like all the production side of things too. And that's another thing that impressed me about that. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So it's clear that in the 1980s, you gravitated towards Freddy because of the style and the type of killer that Freddy was. He was unique, which he was. Jason and Michael, although different, are more similar to each other. They both don't speak. They both wear a mask. They both have, a machete or a knife. They both, they're more...
is a big thing.
Right. Exactly. They're more in the line of, they're not alike, but they're more alike than Freddy is to anybody else. And I can see that. I can understand that. So when was the first time? So you were introduced to Elm Street 3 and probably 4 first, more in towards...
Like we're hung up again, sir.
We're hung up again?
Yeah.
Audio's not synced?
No, I mean, hang on, let me see if I'm just behind, but we're getting a lot of we're hung up.
Oh,
All right, maybe not. All right.
No, hang on.
Audio's not synced up. Weird.
Oh, it's weird. Looks like we are.
All right. Well,
it's good.
Sorry.
It's good.
I'll try not to be distracted by the comments too much. I just don't want us to drop out again.
Yeah, no. It's good. I'm looking at the feed. The stream is green. It says we're good. Everything's fine.
All right, cool. Sorry.
I can see everything, so everything looks okay. Can't see anything. Can't see anything?
I'm looking. I see it again on my end, so we should be okay.
I see it again. I think everything's okay.
All right, my fault.
We'll just truck along here. It's working, but I have a ring going around. Okay, well then take your laundry out of the washing machine there, Oliver, and maybe it'll help. No, I see everything. Yeah, I don't know. I can hear and both see you both fine. Yeah, I don't know. I have the same ring. The same ring. I can hear it in my phones and everything sounds good.
No, it sounds good. I don't hear a ring in mine. I just popped on the audio real quick, so I don't hear a ring. So.
I don't know. Well, we're just going to keep going then.
Yep, let's barrel through. Sorry about that.
Maybe everybody who's saying you have an audio lag, refresh your page and see what happens. Just see what happens. Just do that for me and see what happens.
Refresh!
Yeah, just
refresh it! Somebody refresh it! Come on! You call this a fucking show?
Audio doesn't match the video. Well, it seems to match for me.
That's all right. You listen as a podcast for a little bit then until it fixes itself.
Yeah. Everything's good because some people are saying that everything's good. So
yeah, just try the refresh, guys. Listen to the screamers.
Listen to the screamers. That's the way it's going to go.
All right, so back at it.
So back at it. So in the late 80s, you are obviously you get into Freddy and for the reasons that I said. And you're there and when was the first time that you went back and watched the original Elm Street? Because the original Elm Street is so different from in terms of the execution of Freddy, so different from his portrayal in part 3 and 4. What did you think when you went back to the original Elm Street and you had a chance to watch that and Elm Street 2 as well? Like, what did you feel watching those two, having seen 3 and 4 first?
Elm Street, well, they were, it's kind of weird how different they were in tone, but they were still Freddy, right? Like, except in the first one, Freddy has 3 different voices, right? There's the part 1 voice, there's the part 2 voice, and then there's the voice for the rest of the time, essentially.
That's right.
And then in part 6, they just lose almost, a lot of the effect as well at times. So that was striking. And for a while, even I might have thought when I was younger, I was like, is this a different Freddy? Because, in the first one, it's this is God, and it's not the usual. And then in
that was pretty good. I like that.
Well, again, I'm not a professional, but I've been watching Freddy for so long that I can kind of
100%.
That's one thing, I like. I've got the mimic ear. You know what I mean? I can kind of do that kind of thing.
Sure.
But then the second one, it's way lower. It's in the second one they almost carried through the Freddy that we got at the very end of part 1, where he's like, "You what?" It's like
right.
It's like, well, first off, the 2 different voices in part 1 kind of are at odds a little bit when you're, I guess maybe his voice deepens when you come into reality, but yeah, we get more of the deeper in part 2, which is the scary stuff. So I had to take notice of the fact that 1 and 2 were definitely scarier because of their tone. It wasn't as playful, but I appreciated them for the scary reason. You know what I mean?
Right.
For the fact that it was the origin. It actually took me quite a while to warm up to 2. 2 was my least favorite for a while because it was kind of the least like the others that I had seen so many times. But having rewatched it again recently, because of Dylan's New Nightmare and everything, it's actually now one of my favorites because it's so well done and because it is the scariest Freddy, in my opinion. And for those curious, we are going to try and fold aspects of that look into ours. We are trying to make a wholly unique Freddy. So it's not going to be like the part 4 Freddy or the part, it's not even going to be our own personal Freddy.
There you go. You're there. You froze for a second, but you're there. You were giving like these weird.
It's not going to be any Freddy we've seen before, but there are going to be aspects of some of the ones that we like the best folded in, and that's definitely one of them. So that was my thought when I watched him. I still loved him, but for different reasons. I got to say that A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, I've always had an affection for. And ever since I was a kid in the 1980s. And although I can't remember, because, we're going back 35 years ago now, essentially. It is. Actually, it's 35 years this year. I can't remember if I watched the first Elm Street first or if I watched the second Elm Street first. It's entirely possible that my introduction to Freddy may have been Elm Street 2. And then I watched the first one, although I'm not 100% sure on that. So there's definitely a nostalgic attachment to it for me, but I've always appreciated, like you said, the darkness and the how dark they went with Freddy, and the look of him is downright terrifying. Now, how do you... just real quick. 3 had the best kill, but 2 still, in my opinion, has the best dream sequence with the bus at the beginning.
Oh, that's unbelievable. It's one of
so
my...
well done. Oh my God. It's still scary to this day, even with the miniature aspect and all that stuff. It still plays so creepy and freaky, even to this day. It's amazing.
Absolutely. How do you feel about the continuity issues in Elm Street 2 in terms of the pool sequence scene, in terms of Freddy being these people are supposedly not, asleep, they're awake. Freddy is now there. I have my own thoughts on it. And, but how do you, as the Elm Street expert, how do you feel when people say, well, but it doesn't make any sense, man. It doesn't make any sense. How come they're not even asleep?
Mm-hmm.
What do you have to say about that?
Okay, if I'm honest, my knee-jerk response is, so, because I look, what am I gonna? Jesse is in the arms of Lisa, right? Or it's Lisa, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Lisa, yeah.
Lisa, like that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, so he's with her, so it can't be him, right? So,
right.
It never made sense to me. But listen, it was pretty much the first instance of Freddy crossing into reality, even though it's technically in the continuity of the movies. It's kind of the first time and only time we ever saw up until New Nightmare and now Dylan's New Nightmare of Freddy doing that. So I think it doesn't make sense, but it is important within the lore of Freddy just because it's so anomalous.
Right. I've often thought that too. I guess it didn't bother me because I always saw it sort of the same ways that you did, that it was his moment that he made that transition into reality. And it's a frightening sort of, I don't know, it just didn't. And you know what, I guess, as a kid and I mean, yes, if I look at it with through maybe more of a critical lens, I can certainly see what people are talking about. And certainly maybe if we were to go back and do it again, maybe that wouldn't be the wisest decision to make, but damn, does he look good, and look, I'm a stickler for continuity and keeping things and but damn, does he look good, and maybe sort of through that lens, it's like, yeah, but fuck, man, he sounds and looks great. Like that shot that, people who, watch me all the time, that I have, geek gasms over the shot where the father comes out with a shotgun and shoots the top of the table or something, and he just turns like this and he's looking at the father and the flames are in the foreground. It's just so you can see the wetness on his face and the sunken eyes and the teeth, and it's like, damn, that should just been his look through the whole fucking thing. They should have just taken that and just amazing. But I agree with you. Okay, so And it's A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is your favorite. Tell me why that's your favorite. Is it your favorite because and I want to tackle why for you, because 9 times out of 10, if you ask a horror fan or an Elm Street fan, and this isn't an exact science, obviously it may be 8 out of 10, I don't know. But generally speaking, I think most Elm Street fans refer to 3 as their favorite. So because I have a feeling that you can dig a little deeper rather than just, well, it's fun. It's fun. I mean, that might be part of it, but I think you look at these things through a different lens. So why is 3 for you your favorite Elm Street film?
It's funny. Yeah, I agree with you. I think probably 8 out of 10 would be closer, because there's always going to be those people that look at those 8 out of 10 as plebes because they don't like the original the best. There's always that section of the audience. But I think it's my favorite for a lot of reasons. But one, it's still maintaining the scary aspect of Freddy before he goes kind of full silly. He doesn't really start to go full silly, in my opinion, until 5, but it starts to drift more that way in 4. But 3, you're still kind of hanging on to scary Freddy, even though he's doing slightly silly stuff. He's still doing them in a scary way. Like, yes, his fingers turn into syringes, a little silly, but it's still really freaky. The lighting that they use and the angle and the fact that he's literally like getting off on killing this girl, who's by and large kicked her habit and is trying to stay that way. That's really sadistic when you peel away some of the silliness, right? And this again with Will. Sorry, I'm touching my desk, so I'm shaking my view here. But
that's all right. I just thought I just thought it was one of those Arizona earthquakes or something.
Yeah, lots of those out here. Will, that becomes the Wizard Master. I mean, yeah, it's not the most creative kill, but it has some of the scariest and like that kill itself has silly Freddy being scary. When he's like, "Oh, Will, you look tired. Have a seat." That's still unnerving as hell.
I love the way he says tired. Like, "You look tired."
Yeah, exactly. Which is, of course, double meaning because the wheelchair and stuff. Like, I love that. But just the simpleness of "have a seat." That's right. It's so sadistic while being kind of silly. And the kid uses the old dated effects and stuff, but it's no cheesier than the Emperor in Star Wars, that everyone loves so much.
Yeah.
And just, picks him up, and the kid that's always in the chair gets to run for a little bit before getting once again taken out, except this time for good. And the puppet kill is the best kill in the franchise, in my opinion. I think that whole sequence is one of the most creative sequences and one of the most disturbing, because again, Freddy leaves him up there long enough to make sure everyone else gets to gather to watch him die. You know what I mean? And that's again sadistic Freddy with what some might consider silly. And then you got the acting of Patricia Arquette, who granted was a screamy terror in this. That version of Patricia Arquette could have played the kid in the Babadook. Like, there's that much insane screaming from her in this. But
sure.
But you got Lawrence Fishburne, and I really liked all the doctors, and I don't know, it's just
you got Bill Maher.
Yeah. Well, and then you get Nancy coming back, of course. So the snake, for God's sake, the giant Freddy snake is amazing. Like, they started to really go for it with the effects in part 3 as well. And the set design of oh God, I'm spacing his name now. I'm gonna get destroyed in the comments. But the silent one, when he's tied up, that whole design, that set piece where they're coming down the stairs and he's tied up over a pit.
Right. Yeah. Yes.
They really started to go for it. And so that's a myriad of reasons right there why I like it just more than, oh, it's cool. Yeah. Obviously, I didn't even mention the welcome to prime time, bitch, what might be Freddy's most re-uttered line by fans and stuff.
Yeah, but the fact that you didn't mention that shows you actually how much there is in Elm Street 3. Beyond that, I mean, that is usually people's go-to, right? You know, it's your big break, welcome to, you know, and smash into the TV, and that's usually what people go to. But there's so much. I have to agree with you. It probably, I like the Elm Street films, I think, pretty much in their order, which you can't say a lot of in a lot of the franchises. But I think I like the first one the best, and then I think I like the second one, and then the third one, and then. Probably if I had to keep going, it probably would be 4. And then if I had to keep going, you know, although I would say no, after the third one, it's probably New Nightmare, to be fair. I would probably go 1, 2, 3, New Nightmare, then 4, and then 5, and then whatever that crap is at the end. That's my opinion, but it's just my opinion. But
Freddy versus Jason,
yeah. But it's one of those things where but you hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of it's Freddy in Elm Street 3 is that hybrid between where he was going but where he's still coming from, and I think that's why I too can enjoy his performance in that film. In my opinion, I wish that's as far as they would have gone, because I think by part 6, it just feels too carnival barker, it's no longer scary. It's just more about what sensational dream sequence set piece can we create that looks really surreal and maybe Salvador Dali-ish or something. You know what I mean? I mean, that's really at the end of the day how it feels for me. Whereas when you go back to the originals, I really get a sense that Freddy is scary, you know, not so much carnival-y. Do you feel that way? Did you like where they went with the character, or do you prefer the hybrid maybe we got in 3, or do you prefer the darker side?
I think I prefer the hybrid, and I've unfortunately that it's leaked into the writing a little bit, or at least it did for the teaser. My writing for the actual short, Freddy said more in the teaser than he says in the entire short. So that's one thing I wanted to, you know, I wish was a little bit more in line in retrospect, because I think a lot of people thought he was talking too much in the teaser, but that was a little bit of the 3 sort of leaking in. And I think I've had ideas that I've even thrown to you where I still like my idea that I tossed, you know, that is a little bit on the nose for nowadays, because that's the 3 and 4 Freddy, you know, coming out in me. And so I do. That's my favorite, and I love the way that Freddy plays. But you got to be really, because it's really up to the edge before he starts to fall off into silliness. And honestly, Fonzie, the whole jump the shark thing started because Fonzie jumped a shark on a motorcycle. Freddy did it on a broomstick. You know what I mean? As soon as that happened, and that's the first appearance of Freddy in that movie, is him on the broomstick, and it's like, oh, you're just saying, guys, don't expect any kind of scary Freddy in this movie at all.
For me, the jumping of the shark moment for Freddy, I think, was in part 5 when he's force feeding that, you know, character. I was kind of like, he's like, and I'm just kind of like, oh man, I don't know. I don't know. But
there's
then
something, again, that plays a little different nowadays when you think about, you know, anorexia and stuff like that. Like, if that changes, and that could still play if it's an anorexic girl nowadays, you know what I mean?
Yes, I get it.
But yes, it is silly and over the top. But again, I think that the imagery of her friends, you know, leaping out of the fridge trying to get away, I think that's a disturbing image.
Listen, the
not
set
well.
Right.
Disturbing in theory, you know.
Right. The set pieces. I mean, listen. The set pieces and what they built for everything. I mean, even Freddy on a broomstick. I mean, the set pieces they did for all. I mean, it's all brilliant stuff. It's all visually interesting to watch. I just think that Freddy no longer became scary. He was. becoming almost like a punchline, and I didn't like that as a fan. You know, it was I wanted him to remain sort of. I think if they had just stuck with where he was in 3 and expanded on that rather than trying to continue to make him more of a comedian, I think maybe I mean I still don't think we would have gotten 5 more movies, but I think maybe we would have gotten a few more that were better, maybe. I don't know, but
actually, and it's funny, just real quick, I wanted to piggyback on something that you said in a recent live stream regarding Robert playing one more, you know, after all this time, because the movies have tried to course correct and stuff, and Robert's notoriously, or actually he even said it a while ago, I don't even know if he would still feel this way at this point, but if we got this covered as any indication, they said it last week. So, you know, I don't put any stock in that.
I've never heard of "we got this covered."
They're a punchline because they report on any rumor with completely unsubstantiated. So it was a joke.
It's ironic.
Yeah, it's ironic, but
we got this covered doesn't have much covered, I guess.
No, exactly. Okay. Exactly. Right. So the reason I bring that up is because if Robert is going to do it, he said he would do one more, and I think that he's only saying that because he's worried about what would happen, how it would end up, right? I think if a new Nightmare movie was received and done well enough, I'm not going to say as well because I think it would be done better, but if it was done well enough where it got the attention and popularity that Halloween 2018 got, I think that he'd be willing to do 2 more, you know, to do a final trilogy thing. I think he's saying 1 because he's so gun shy about how the last few turned out for him, you know?
Right. I think it's a good point. I think my worry with that is, and I think you bring up a good point. My worry is that if it's that, then what? Right. And because, you know, people say, you know, only Robert can do it. Which I, you know, disagree with. I think there, and Robert would disagree with that as well. You know, but I understand because people are emotionally attached to him as Freddy. It's like Harrison Ford will always be my Indiana Jones, but it would be naive to think that there's nobody ever in the history of mankind ever again that could don a fedora and do justice to the character. I mean, of course there could be. Of course,
I personally think David Howard Thornton could do it.
I always thought Hugh Jackman, like not weird. Maybe now, but I thought 10 years ago maybe Hugh Jackman could do. Oh no, are you talking about Freddy?
Yeah, doing Freddy.
Oh no, I'm talking about Indiana Jones. Oh, I'm talking about Indiana Jones. Sorry, because I was talking about it. No, I was talking about Indiana Jones.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Hugh Jackman for Freddy. McRae's fucking lost it.
No, I see. Yeah, no, I was not saying David Howard Thornton for Indiana Jones.
Because at first I was like, well, that's a little weird.
No, my apologies. No, David Howard Thornton for Freddy.
Right.
Because, you know, Freddy has a theatricality to him, and David does that with art.
Right.
Granted, people are going to say, "Oh no, David," because they might have hated Terrifier, but the point remains that he could, I think, pull off a creepy child killer that then, when put in makeup, is able to be a little bit more theatric while being scary. So
yeah,
I agree with you. I think there's definitely people out there that could do it.
Of course there is, right? I mean, there is. It's all about it. It's not about doing a Robert Englund impression. It's about doing justice to the character so that when you look at the character, you go, I believe that's Freddy. It's not Robert Englund, but it's totally Freddy Krueger. And that's important. But I think when it comes to Robert, I have no doubt that he probably could have 1 left in him. But if it's really successful, then what? I mean, he's approaching his mid-70s. Let's say he doesn't want to continue to go on. Let's say he's getting, you know, maybe, God forbid, something happens, right? You know, maybe he's, you know, because to sit in that makeup chair, he can do it for the Goldbergs for an afternoon, but to sit in that makeup chair every day for the next, 8 weeks, and being up till all hours of the morning and doing all this, it's, when you approach your 70s, when you're in your mid 70s, it's not he's been there, done that. He's doing the con circuit. He's doing bit parts here and there. He's at a different point in his life. Could he do it? Yeah, he probably could, but does he really want to do it? And if it's really successful, my worry is then if he doesn't want to continue, then you have to recast anyway. And that's going to piss a lot of people off.
So feel him out very, very closely and talk with him and be like, look, we have a plan in place, and here's something just off the top of my head that they could do.
Get Robert on the show here. I'd get him on.
Yeah. Here's something they could do is, he's technically, if we're going back to the original continuity, he's technically a dream demon, right? Or he's controlled by dream demons, or he's empowered rather by dream demons. And so technically, you could reboot the franchise with him, and people are like, if it's got Robert, it's not a reboot. There's people, it's a sequel. It's like, you don't understand. A sequel can be rebooting the franchise. Ghostbusters this year is a reboot, but it's a sequel. But it's rebooting the franchise because the whole idea is it was off and you are rebooting it.
That's right.
After a certain period of time. People don't understand that. I get in so many
There's a difference between there's a difference between a remake and a reboot, but they're tossed around interchangeably like they're the same thing often.
Right, exactly. So do it as a reboot and a sequel where, Freddy is looking for, a replacement. Maybe the dream demon power is starting to tear him apart from the inside, and he needs to find a replacement because they've sucked him dry, but he believes in the killing in the dreams or something. Again, this is just spitballing off the top of my head. And so he goes and finds a sick, sadistic person who is our protagonist for once instead of a final girl or something like that. Like, let's go something completely different this time that leads into where we used to be, right? So he finds this person. He sort of enables them, gives them a portion of his power to see what they could do with it, and ultimately gets involved himself as well somehow. But basically by the end, you might have a new dream demon taking over that can have their own look. And if you really wanted, you could try and fix the continuity of 6 by bringing back his daughter to be the one that he passes it down to. Then you could have a female Freddy and mess with that look. That actually was a storyline in one of the comic book Nightmare on Elm Street series. So there is precedent for that. And so you could technically fix it by making it scary again, but still bringing in the continuity of the daughter if you really wanted. Granted, those are a bit ham-fisted, and the new generation kind of thing won't be liked by a lot of people, but it's either that or it's going to be the awkward recast, like you said. If you're going to establish Robert coming back, you have to establish an exit strategy as well.
I agree. And do you think that maybe then, what about this? Because Fred Krueger was a real guy, but Freddy Krueger, who is tormenting everybody's dreams, like you said, there's a supernatural. Well, it is. I mean, it's literally supernatural. I mean, he's in your dreams. He's who he is. And do you think that maybe a literal passing of the torch, like you're talking about, but to somebody,
or passing of the glove,
passing of the glove, right? Passing of the glove to somebody younger, but it's not. But think of this. So it's not actually somebody else. It's still supposed to be the same Freddy, but he's been able to sort of
Doctor Who himself.
Kind of like what, for those of you that have seen The Rise of Skywalker, kind of like what Palpatine did. He was this old, and then all of a sudden, at the end of the movie, he becomes the Palpatine we remember. Mm-hmm. Now, to be fair, that's the same actor, and it's a bit different. But I'm thinking about the concept here is that because it all comes down to casting, you cast the right person, the right individual, who suddenly it's like Freddy is younger again. He's a bit different. But the casting is so spot on that it's still supposed to be the same Freddy, but moving forward, it's a new incarnation. It's a different version of Freddy, but you're like, damn, like he's...
So that could be the actual twist of the story, right? So we're following this guy. We think he's going to be the new Freddy, but in actuality, it's Freddy's last kill because the Dream Demons have identified this guy's look as like the new, they want that younger visage for themselves, but it'll still, and so when as I said earlier, if the Dream Demons are kind of tearing him apart from the inside, maybe you again, have you watched Doctor Who at all? That's why I threw out that reference.
The last Doctor Who I watched, I think, was in the 80s. I haven't watched it in a long time.
So I watched the reboot, or at least the first few Doctors of the reboot.
Right. But I get the concept you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So the regeneration, when they need to change actors, the Doctor basically overpowers and regenerates into a new body. Right. So in this instance, again, not trying to lift directly from that, again, spitballing off the top, but right. You know, they've identified this new creep as the guy whose image they want to take on now. And so they kill the guy in order to whatever absorb his essence, and then the energies, you know, just change, and Freddy kind of, you know, morphs through some kind of cool special effect into this new guy.
Right.
Or maybe they fucking burn the guy. Maybe they got to burn the guy. So
where do I sign?
That same. No. Yeah. No. So yeah, really. So they've got to. So he's got to be that burned look, right?
Right.
So that's how he kills him. He fucking puts him in a boiler, or he throws a Molotov on him, like the parents did.
You see,
you know,
I think
that's like the transition thing,
right? If you were to give, you know what, if I was an executive and you came into my office with this idea like we are right now, I'd be like, okay, like at first, because it's such a tricky slope, right? As you know, right? It's one of those things where people are so emotionally attached to Robert Englund as Freddy. And I get it. I understand it. It's very different than, you know, Nick Castle or James Jude Courtney, because Freddy is that, you know, he's that presence he speaks, he performs. There's the subtle nuances that Robert brings to the character. He's actually acting. He's talking. He's all this kind of stuff. So I get why people feel that, nobody else, you know, who else are you going to get? But if there was a moment like you're talking about where Robert Englund is passing the glove, figuratively, I mean, I guess you could do it literally, but you don't want to be cheesy with it either, right? Mm-hmm. So there's that passing of the glove, but there's almost a moment where old Freddy is talking to this young Freddy. You know what I mean? Not really young, but there's that, it's your job now. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, or, you know, like the demons are, there's a moment that maybe fans, I'm not saying that that's exactly it, but maybe there's a moment that fans have an opportunity to almost say goodbye. Mm-hmm. You know, so it feels organic. Look, as you know, you're not going to please everybody. That's fucking shit. Yeah. There's always somebody that, but then there's going to be people that be like, well, that's kind of interesting, right? Mm-hmm. And again, but maybe,
at least maybe that's not it, though.
Right.
You got to ask those same fans that are like, that's bullshit. No, you know, you got to ask those same guys, like, would you rather him just disappear between movies? Right. Or would you rather them attempt to give him some kind of appropriate, you know, a send off in a way that, you know, you can send off Freddy, you know what I mean? Like,
right. Because I think if you had, especially with Freddy, see, it's different with Michael and Jason because the guys don't speak, and
they're in masks.
Right. And theoretically, you can stick any 6'2" guy under that costume and away you go. Mm-hmm. So it's not, you know, now there are nuances and subtleties that people try, especially when it comes to Michael Myers. Jason just seems like just go out there and do whatever the fuck you want. With Michael, there always seems to be that okay, now there's this and there's this and there's this and there's this and there seems to be a little more more of the character traits per se than maybe Jason. But that being said, I think you're right. I think maybe, and it doesn't mean it would work. I mean, maybe this is the stupidest fucking idea of all time that, you know, we're coming up with here. But I do like the principle of the idea, which is allowing there to be a moment for Freddy fans, for Robert Freddy fans, to have a moment to say goodbye. And if it's a moment that feels pretty cool and really organic, and maybe, you know, if the transition is feels like, oh, this is interesting, maybe it'll be embraced rather than, as you said, Robert does one movie and then Joe Schmo is cast in the second movie. And it's kind of like, what the heck's going on here, right?
You could really,
it's not a bad idea.
You could really drive it home too, like with a nice post-credit sequence. Like if Freddy kind of, you know, whatever energizes, however you want to describe it, into this new entity. And again, just looking at a comment here, like maybe the demons are pulling Freddy to hell and they leave someone else to be the new baddie. You could kind of fold that in where, like, you know, he could say, you know, my time on this plane is done. Now it's yours. And then like in a post credits, you just do one really fucking cool shot starting on Robert's eyes and backing up. And as you see him sitting on a fucking throne in hell with a weird, like, crown that's been formed out of his burned skull, and he's like now ruling in hell or some shit like that. Like, you know, or a level
cute.
of hell.
That's cute.
You know?
Yeah,
Again, like it, depending on how silly you want to go, but
right.
It gives him the real, you know, where it's not like, you know, it's your time now, Elliot. You know, like that kind of thing.
Well, no, when I said that, I meant
I understand. I
just meant that like, there's a moment with the character that we're
absolutely.
able to see the transition and say that goodbye, whether he literally says that or not, or who the hell knows.
Yeah. No,
but
I got you.
There's that moment where we have that moment, right? It's like a moment, and you know, not to get all morbid here, but it's like a moment where you're at, you know, a funeral and you need a moment with the person, right? You know what I mean? And you just have that moment, because in a lot of cases, and again, I'm not trying to compare the two, because obviously one is art and one's real life, but the principle of it is the same. People get so emotionally attached to these characters and these storylines. They're so, it's a part of them, that sometimes if you don't have that moment for the fans, it feels empty. It feels like, you know, I wish I had there's something tangible I can, you know, refer to, and I can see it, and it feels organic, and it's all there and nice and neat and shiny with a bow. And sometimes you don't get that, and sometimes you don't get that in life. And you know, if there is an opportunity to do something like what you're talking about with Freddy, I'm open to that, you know. And there's so many different ways that you can do it and approach it. This is just one way.
Another one that literally just popped in my head is, you know, you could go as simple as, you know, Freddy, it's a little aggressive, but it's not outside the realm of maybe what Freddy would have done, but maybe he takes advantage of a girl in her dream and she's pregnant in reality as a result. You know,
wow, that's now,
because you know, why not? If you can pull parts of Freddy out into reality, you're pulling a part of him out technically, and you know, then you have a new Freddy that's but you know,
I pulled out. How the fuck are you pregnant?
If he had pulled out, then she wouldn't have pulled a part of him out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The one-liners I can hear from just this is unbelievable to me. Can you?
But think about it. Nancy can pull his hat out. Yeah. Oh no, not again.
Oh my God, can you imagine?
No, but realistically, again, you know, if you can pull a part of his clothing out, why wouldn't, you know, maybe that's a new plan. He's like, I'll rebirth myself into this world as a whole new thing. And then, so that's the beginning of the movie, right? You can even do that. Just cameo Robert as the Freddy that, you know, seduces a girl in her dream. And then the new actor, you show the pregnancy and then the birth, and then boom, flash forward 18 years, and there's something wrong with this fucking kid. And he starts to be able to attack people in their dreams.
There, you know? See, there's another, again, it's avant-garde, it's risky, but I like the way you're thinking. And whether or not that, like if you and I were doing, you know, the film and we were in charge of, you know, trying to come up with this shit, whether that exact thing ends up being the thing, who knows? But I like the way you're thinking, and I like the direction you're going in, because it tells me that you want to do justice to what's come before. You don't want to leave fans high and dry, but you acknowledge that Robert can't be doing this for the next, you know, 15 years. I mean, you know, it's something that we need to figure out the future of this while still honoring what's come before. And whether any of the ideas we've talked about here is the right one, who knows? I mean, if we were in a room with a whiteboard and, you know, and 2 or 3 other people, I mean, we could come up with something even better. But I like the direction that you're thinking. No. I'm kidding. But it's true though, right? Like I like the direction. I like your mindset. I like what you're thinking about it, because, you know, you could at the end of the day just remake the movie again with a different actor, but then what? Right? I mean, where does that, you know, now in terms of, I think that if they were to remake it, now, I mean, like remake it all together and not do a sequel, I think they need to, and I want to get your thoughts on this before we jump over to Dylan's New Nightmare. but I want to get like, I think that, well, you know me. I mean, maybe it's a bit biased because I really like Dark Freddy, but I think they should go all the way back to I mean, it's a Nightmare on Elm Street, right? You know, it's not a fluffy dream on Elm Street. And I think the intensity that would need to be brought to a remake, even more intense than the 2010 remake, which to me there were a few mistakes on that. The first was it was too glossy and had that color. It was too pristine, too polished. And also our main protagonist and protagonists were already being sucked in by Freddy when we're introduced to them.
It was too intense right up front.
Right.
You know, because there was no ramp up.
Right. We didn't have an opportunity to sort of see these characters' downfall and watch them. I mean, to be fair, Nancy and Tina were already dreaming of Freddy when we're introduced to them. However, it wasn't quite as intense right out of the gate, right? We were able to see sort of that downfall. There wasn't a lot of room for character development, but there was enough there that we were emotionally attached to them. Whereas when we're introduced to Nancy in the 2010 remake, I mean, you know, Rooney Mara is easy on the eyes and she's great, but she was emo right out of the gate, and I didn't feel any, attachment to her. But I think when it comes to, so that's something that I think needs to be corrected. And I've often said that a production company like A24, and I'm not saying that they're the right people. I'm not saying that. But I like their style in terms of tapping into the psychology and the psychological aspects of a lot of the movies they release, whether it's Hereditary or Midsummer or, It Comes at Night or, whatever the case is, whether you like that one but don't like that one, whatever. I like that, or The Witch. I like that they are... It's a very cerebral, and again, Freddy's got to have a line. You don't want to go too far that way, but I like that aspect of the films that they make, because I think that audiences are smarter today. They want more today. They demand more today. They want to be challenged more than they ever have before. But at the same time, you don't want to lose the identity of what Freddy and Elm Street is. Do you think something like that, maybe an A24 or that type of approach to Freddy, keeping it, slasher and Freddy and doing all this kind of thing, but really sort of tapping into the darkness of these dreams and these nightmares, taking it to what Wes did, but to the next level. Do you think that's the right way to approach this?
I would say... For a movie, no. For a series, yes. So here's my thinking. Again, as you were talking, I can't help it sometimes. My brain, things people say just spark ideas in my head, sure. And that's how I've done a lot of my brainstorming sessions with producer Dave and stuff. But my producer Dave, not this producer Dave. But
yeah, that's right. His.
But as a movie. Here's what I think. Here's how you can redo the first Nightmare on Elm Street and make it interesting. You have to do it as a series. You can't do it as a movie, because even in the movie, the kids have all started to see Freddy off camera. Like, even when we first, like, Nancy starts seeing him, and then everyone else is like, oh, I've been seeing him too. What's interesting is, give me a group of kids in episode 1, give me a 10-episode, 8-episode series, even if it's done by Flanagan or whatever, that each episode can have that slow, methodical, A24 psychological build. Show us where all of these kids are just starting to encounter Freddy. Like, they're having normal nightmares that kids have. And then there's a weird twist at the end that maybe not even is Freddy, that is just... has, like in the first scene of the like, each episode maybe focus on a kid, the way A Haunting of Hill House focused on a different family member per episode, and show how it goes from just slowly disturbing nightmares all the way to Freddy actually appearing himself by the end of their episode. So sometimes it's just sweater colors on something scary in early in the episode, and then it evolves a little bit more, and it evolves a little bit more, and every kid is dealing with their own social issues within a high school, right? So each one, you can tell a different story in an episode, and it's different enough that then you get to episode 5, where now the crew is all together and they discover that they're all seeing Freddy, And now you all have to mount a defense over the back half of the season. And I think doing it that way is going to get people really wrapped. Like, it's going to really bring their attention in, and it gives you the opportunity to really tell the full origin story, and then do like Watchmen did in episode 7, where you get the origin story of Hooded Justice. You know, in episode 7 or 8, the kids will finally discover the origin of Freddy, and we get the whole episode doing the origin of Freddy as they're, you know, whatever, finding it through notes or whatever have you. You know, that's how you're going to be able to really do justice to the original Nightmare on Elm Street story without it feeling rushed or having to do something new in a 2-hour movie. Do you know what I mean? If you don't do something different enough from the original, then people are going to hound you for it in a movie. If you do it in a series, then you're expanding on it all and giving yourselves the opportunity to make it better.
Oh, wait, we just conked out again. 1 second, we'll see if this conks back in. Wait, we're coming back. We're back.
Sorry, I talked too much.
No.
The stream was tired of me talking.
That's okay. The stream came back. The stream came back the very next day.
We lost him again!
It's okay. The stream is back, ladies and gentlemen. The stream is back.
I think most of what I said was out there, though.
I think most of what you said is out there, yes. You know what? I agree with everything that you've said. And I have to admit, I haven't given much thought to an Elm Street series. And I think the reason I haven't given much thought to an Elm Street series, although I could be completely wrong on this, is the visceral sort of gratuitous nature that can come with something like a slasher genre, the blood and the gore and things like that, and whether or not that would fly on Netflix or, you know, Hulu or Amazon Prime or HBO Max that, you know, is going to be coming out, would I think it'd be more of a Netflix thing, but I because I don't think Netflix are they under the MPA yet? It used to be the MPA or the MPAA. Now I think it's just the Motion Picture Association. Or the
I don't
motion.
know. I don't think
I've never
think
seen
a rating on any of their things.
I don't think they are. But I again, I have to compliment you on the principle of what you're talking about, because streaming is, you know, series, whether it's whatever it is, there is the time to devote to character development. You know, and there's the time to bring in those subtle nuances of, I'm going to say it, mood and atmosphere, but all that stuff that you absolutely, you know, there's that build. You can take your time with different characters and you can really build the story, like you're saying, and keeping it psychological and keeping it, you know, mysterious and eerie. I mean, I'm not a big, quote unquote TV watcher in terms of fiction, but the first show I ever binged watched was Stranger Things. And back at the end of 2016, I was a little late to the party because it was released in August, I think, or July or something. And I didn't watch till around Halloween time of 2016. And this was my first experience in binge watching. And I didn't intend to binge watch it, but I sat down and I was sure there's all the stuff that we love as two guys that were young boys growing up through the 1980s. Obviously, there's the nostalgia and the He-Man and the this and the that and the music and the Spielberg and the Carpenter and the, you know, and sure, okay, great, yeah. But I've never experienced watching something and being so captivated by the end of a show that I felt this compelling need to watch the next episode immediately. And that's the one thing the Duffer Brothers did really well. And I'm sure it's done on many, many different shows, but I'm not a big show guy. So I'm sure it's all over the place. But that was my first experience in understanding, wow, the character development is so good in this show. They have so much time to get me as a viewer excited about the mysteries and the nuances of what I'm seeing with all these characters and stuff, that by the end of the next, you know, of the show, I'm like, damn, I got to see what happens next. So with Elm Street, like you're talking about, that's actually a really good point, because you can take your time with the ensemble cast and really sort of build and not even introduce Freddy in all his glory until, like you said, maybe till towards, you know, the end of, maybe even the end of the first season. Really setting it up for a second season. Like, well, I mean, you see him, but not in all his glory. I mean, that's fascinating.
You'd have to in towards the end. You definitely have to. But
yes.
I would think he would reveal himself by about as soon as they all come together and realize what's going on. I would think at that point he could start appearing at least more so in glimpses and stuff. But yeah, like. But I think definitely for the first 4 episodes or 5 episodes, as you're developing each of the people, right? You're cutting in and out. You're showing each of their lives, right? You're showing them at school and interacting with the others, but you're going back to their individual lives. So maybe you have a girl who's, got the overbearing parents trying to make sure that she's in, playing her instrument, a violin or something. I'm trying to stay away from super stereotypical stuff.
Sure.
You have another person that's obsessed with their online presence, right? Maybe a YouTuber even. And like each different interest that each of these people have allow for an entire episode's worth of Freddy playing, right? And so
that's right.
Dreaming, you can have Freddy playing within their interests, and then it's not just like, so you get that sort of bit that you get in Nightmare 3, where it's, there was a D&D type thing, there was the drugs thing, there was the puppet thing, right? You can have all of those things, but you have a full episode to really have the creators play with it and let Freddy start sprinkling in. And like, the people don't immediately, in this scenario, none of the main cast is going to die until the back half of the season, if then. And at that point, you've liked them enough for sure that you're going to care, first off. But that doesn't mean there can't be carnage in the first 5 episodes, because the stuff that he's doing to them in their dreams can be very carnage filled, and he can be messing with things around them. And like when they wake up, everything's okay, but maybe not, like there's so much room to play and and still hit all of the beats of a really good Freddy movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I agree. And really build that sense of that mystery of who is this guy and why is he doing this and why has he chosen us? I mean, they may not even know. I mean, we know as an audience, right? Because we know the story of Freddy, but even the kids in the movie, in the show, I mean, you can build that up too, that they're trying, why us? Why is nobody over on, Bart Street having nightmares?
You can build up, you can build up again.
So much you could do, yeah.
With a show like this, you can take the time to build up the parents too.
That's right.
Each kid's parents were all involved in Freddy's death somehow. The kids of their nightmares can be leaving signs, right? If there's a YouTuber obsessed with it, he could have, like, a parent could walk in and see that he has a video queued up that says, "Who is Freddy Krueger?"
That's right.
And so that sparks the parents to be like, oh shit, how does he know who Freddy Krueger is?
Right.
And then the parents have to sort of get together to figure out what to do. That can be another thing that plays in the back half of the season. There's just so much. Now I'm genuinely a little upset I went through all this on this live stream, because I genuinely want to snip out all these little bits of us talking about these ideas and send them over to the Craven estate and be like, how about this?
How about this? Yeah. And speaking of that, I mean, is there any news on the Craven? I mean, first of all, I like where you're going, and I like that idea, and I would totally be on board with developing that. Is there any news on what's going on with the Craven estate in terms of? I know that they were taking pitches for feature films and also an HBO Max series. Do we know? Has there any news that's dropped since then?
No official news. I know that they are actively taking meetings at least, and there may or may not be a possibility for us to get in on that. Nothing's been confirmed or anything like that, but we're looking into it at the very least.
Right.
But we were looking into it for Dylan's New Nightmare purposes, not for the purposes of any of the 3 ideas that we just came up with.
Right. Of course.
I wish we could, be in the meeting and be like, or there's this, or there's this, or there's this. There's a lot of different ways to bring Freddy back.
Absolutely.
So,
oh yeah.
But no
100%.
official news since they made that official announcement.
Cool. Okay, now let's before we move over to the chat room and answer some questions, let's talk about Dylan's New Nightmare, and let's talk about where this is at. And for those of you that are watching that don't know, quick recap: Dylan's New Nightmare is a fan film currently in pre-production, written, directed, and produced by this guy right here. Right there, right there. There we go. I think I'm right. Right there. That's right. Hey, hi. Cecil Laird of the Horror Show YouTube channel, and it stars Miko Hughes of New Nightmare fame, of course, and myself as taking on the fedora as Freddy Krueger. It's being produced by Cecil as well as Vincent DeSante of Never Hike Alone fame, and being shot by Renee Rivas. And where can you tell us? I mean, of course, I know a few of these things, but the people watching don't necessarily know. What can you tell us about where Dylan's New Nightmare is right now?
And it's in a very good place. So we got the Indiegogo funds. So we have been already fulfilling perks as well as preparing for the production itself. We've basically spent over $3,500 on gloves for both the production and fulfilling the perks. But yeah, we've nailed down. We've gotten the travel taken care of for most of our players. We're still trying to nail down one of the main roles because we have something we're trying to accomplish. And once we know if that's going to happen or not, we'll be able to nail that role down. And then there's a couple of other smaller roles we're looking to fill as well, but here locally in Arizona. So beware of sending a flood of things. We're looking here locally for it, but yeah, so that's taken care of. We have nailed down all the locations, save one, I'll say, that's also going to double as a place that people will be staying. So we are trying to locate the best version of that right now, which is just frankly going to be an Airbnb.
Right.
We try and be smart about the production, and if you can find an Airbnb that's large enough, it tends to be a luxury Airbnb that can house numerous people. So it can house a lot of the crew and cast, as well as doubling as one of the locations for the film. So you're not spending a boatload of money on hotels plus location costs. We're trying to be smart about it. So we're trying to find that location, but we've nailed down everything else. And we've gotten Nora Hewitt, who was the season 9 winner of Face Off. She is up to the task and already working on aspects for the gore and special makeup effects for the film.
She'll be touching my face every day.
Indeed, and for a couple of hours, no less.
That's right. Yeah, quite a few.
Yeah, you guys are going to have your schedule.
We'll be bonding.
Your schedule might be a little rough, Dave. I'll be honest with you, because we're gonna have one or two late nights, and we try to make the starts not that early, but for you, unfortunately, you're going to have a couple of extra hours on everyone.
I'm going to be up probably at 4, maybe something like that.
Butt crack of dawn.
Let's do it.
It's going to be worth it, though.
Fuck it.
Yeah, just if anyone's curious, we're doing actual appliances, not a mask. So we're gonna be able to get good close-ups and all that good stuff. But everything is in place. We're shooting again the May 25th to the 29th, and then we'll be tackling post-production after that. Hopefully, we can get it done around Halloween time to get it released around then.
Right.
We'll see how well that happens. But yeah, so everything's moving along very well, and we might have an announcement regarding casting, but I don't want to get anyone's hopes up, so we're waiting to see what happens.
Right. And how do you, without giving anything away, how do you feel about that potential casting? Are you feeling good, or are you just like, we'll see?
I'm trying to do the we'll see, so I don't put too many eggs in that proverbial basket. And it's not, just so everyone knows and they don't think, it's not Heather.
Right.
Because that's a whole nother mountain to climb, to be honest with you. But it is a cool bit of casting that everyone would really appreciate for a couple of different reasons. So if we can get that going, then trust me, everyone will know right away as soon as we find out. So
yeah,
first steps were taken yesterday, and there were a couple. We know that things were at least looked at, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, I am very happy with it. I am a bit daunted when thinking how much, because Dave and I, we're trying to make sure that we are as creative with how we're shooting this as possible. Dave and I went and saw 1917, and so now his mind is very much of the idea like, how close can we get to making this one shot? And I'm like, no, we can't, we can't do that. There's multiple locations, there's different times, we can't do that. But in principle, he's starting to think creative with transitions and cool maneuvers that we can do. And we've already come up with some really, really neat stuff. There's one transition in particular when Miko wakes up that's going to be freaking dope if we can pull it off. So yeah, we're making sure to do our diligence.
Is that the one that you were talking to me about the other, or is that a different? Because there's that new one that I saw in the most recent script, and that I didn't see in the first one. And I was the effect that you were talking about. I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. I do.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. And but there's one specifically when there's perhaps a swipe that takes place, that transition into the follow up is going to be really neat. The way we're going to do it, it's just going to be a sweet. If we can pull it off right, it's going to take some precise camera movement, but if we can do it right, man, it's going to be so dope.
I'm excited. I mean, I just being there with you and with Dave, and meeting everybody that I haven't met yet, and of course Vince and Nora and Miko, and I mean it's just going to be I just have this feeling, when we all met, well, not everybody, but the sort of the little core there met in Los Angeles back in November. I think I love the chemistry, between everybody, and taking that to the set, it just really excites me, because it tells me that you can feed off of each other, you can work through problems, you can get excited about ideas. That's what really excited me when we were over at Nora's place, and we had just finished getting the cast done of my face and all that fun stuff, and we were sitting in Nora's living room, just shooting the shit, talking about Freddy, talking about the prosthetics, talking about ideas. It was my first time. Well, no, I'd met you at the 40th convention, but it was my first time sort of meeting everybody, and sitting there and watching you guys talk back and forth about ideas, and it was inspiring, because what was interesting was,
that's the lifeblood of filmmaking right there.
Well, it is. And I'm on this project. I'm not a producer. I'm not a writer. I'm not a director. I'm a hired hand. I'm the actor. So it's a very different place to be. I mean, of course, I'll offer ideas where I see fit, and if you like them, great. But at the end of the day, what I like about this is that it's very different than being a part of, let's say, what I'm doing with Black Christmas, right? Where I am the director and the producer and the writer, and then you're really kind of you're neck deep into it. With this, it was fascinating to sit there and just objectively watch you guys bounce ideas off each other. And I can't, because I'm also a filmmaker, it inspires me. It gets me really excited to see the energy of you guys talking and doing all this kind of stuff, and it makes me want to just jump right in. You know what I mean? Like, it's so, that for me is probably is one of the most exciting things I'm looking forward to, is just being in the environment with that energy. You know what I mean? It's just really exciting to me.
Like-minded creativity is some of the most potent fuel, I think, in life. I mean, to me, or for me, it always has been. Like, when you can feed off of each other's excitement, you like you said, you want to get to it. You're like, oh man, May can't get here fast enough.
That's right. And
then the producer side of the brain kicks in. It's like, whoa, buddy, you got a lot to do before May kicks around. But it's funny, I've started to cognitively reframe things, where I'm like, yo, in May, I'm not going to even remember all the stuff that I did to get there. I have to, and it's trust me, doing the work is passing the time. I spent 10 hours at my desk here yesterday. Luckily, I have a stand-up desk. It converts. So I spent 10 hours just creating the cast list, the crew list, the cast and crew contact list, the costuming list, which was extensive because Freddy's got technically 2 costumes in this movie, right? And then Miko's got like 3 costumes, and so I'm doing all that stuff, and I've actually delegated, and we've got a lot of good crew. And it's funny, we have a few other YouTubers that are going to come down to help. CP from Willis Greedy is going to come down and help out.
Cool.
And then also possibly Luke from Confused Reviews might be making his way out as well, because he's a huge Freddy fan. So
awesome.
It's fun assembling the Avengers. You know what I mean? The Nightmare Vengers,
right?
so to speak.
The Night Vengers or the Nightmare Vengers, right?
I don't know. I gotta workshop that one a little bit. But it's invigorating, and it makes you like. I know for myself that I know I'm working on a good project that's going to have a good end result. If I'm constantly, what else do I want to get that done today. I want to get that done today. I want to get that done today. I have an ongoing, to-do list. And I, I'm the kind of OCD guy that this is Dave's copy of the script. So he's been going through making notes on all the different things we're going to need to do and the film blocking and stuff like that. Right. I've started to do the storyboards, but we have to make sure that the script is finalized before I can continue them. And yes, those were stick figures, but everyone gets the point, so it doesn't matter. And then I've got my entire production folder right here. You know what I mean? And it's fun to me. My OCD-ness requires me to organize. But it also, I get so much pleasure out of crossing stuff off my list.
Yes, dude, you know what? I'm going through the same thing right now with It's Me, Billy. Now we're still in development because we haven't launched our campaign yet, which will launch hopefully in April. And but it's the same thing. Like we've gone through, the script for It's Me, Billy, and then we're doing we have to do the shot list, and we have to do the crew list, and we have to do the prop list. We have to do all these things looking at the script before we can then assemble our production budget. You know what I mean? And then we'll know ballpark sort of what we need for the Indiegogo campaign to make this a reality. Mm-hmm. And the other day, I guess it was about maybe was it a month or so ago, maybe, I posted on my social media that Bruce and I had finished a 9-hour production meeting. And I had a few people saying, no, it was. I mean, he literally got here at 1 PM. And I think maybe we broke for maybe 40 minutes for, supper. But then we went right back at it. And but he got here at 1, but we didn't start till about 2:30 because we were catching up and talking and, shooting the shit. Then we broke, but we didn't finish until about 11 at night. And so it literally was about a 9 or 10 hour production meeting of nonstop creative ideas, going through the script, writing all this down, typing it out, working in, spreadsheets and this sheets and that sheets. And I can't tell you, the time flew by because it is so, there's a creative energy that is around, even just the two of us that are sitting there doing all this. There's this creative, contagious energy, and you just find, because this is what you were born to do. This is the environment that you love to be in. And when you love what you do, it really is not, look, it's hard work, yes, but it's not painstakingly, it's fun. It's amazing. So I totally get what you're saying. There's a
100% difference between doing something you love and doing something you enjoy.
That's right.
Okay. So like I can play video games for a while.
That's right.
Depending on the game, I can sit there for anywhere between 1 hour and 4 hours at a clip, depending on if a game is attracting me enough. However, there's inevitably a breaking point where I'm like, oh, I'm done. I'm good on this. But when you're doing something that you love, and especially if it's going towards something that will have an end result,
that's right.
Then you ride that wave, dude. You can't, first off, you can't afford not to. Second, you don't even consider not doing it, right? Suddenly you look and it's dark, and then you're like, oh damn, what time is it? And I'm sure you guys had this, you're like, Jesus, it's 11 already.
That's right.
It's like,
yep.
It just, but it just means that to me, it's like people that work out. I wish I was one of them more regularly. I'm trying to become that, but it's like, at the end of it, you feel like you've accomplished something, you're done and you're like, you can exhale. And it's the same when you're on a creative bent, right? It's not as necessarily, it can be physically daunting if you're standing for 10 hours working on stuff, but nonetheless, it's that same sort of feeling of accomplishment because it's going towards an end result and you've taken the next step and you're like, oh, the nice thing, and another way to liken it to video games is you pick up at your save point, the next day.
Right.
You've all that stuff is still done. And you're just, all it's done is helped you. Like everything that you finish when you're being creative, it's like, again, using another video game thing, it's like Minecraft. You're building underneath you, right? You're building your foundation, and all you're doing is raising yourself to the next step. Okay, now the next step. Now you're getting that done, and you're building it up, and it's raised you up to the next step. And every time you do that, it's fulfilling. And when you're doing it on a creative venture, it's fun too. So you're like me. You're not wanting to necessarily walk away from something that's both fun and productive.
That's right. No, you're bang on. When you are working towards that goal, you have the script in front of you, it's the visualization of the potential of what this could be. I was telling you, and I don't want to say anything because obviously I don't know if it was going to be possible, but I remember telling you when we spoke on Skype about a week or so ago about a certain location that I was excited about, right? And I was looking at this and that, and just that alone, I mean, just finding that, discovering that can put you on a high for the rest of the afternoon, you know what I mean? And you're there and you're like, oh my God, I could do this, I could do that. We could totally do this, and it's just that level of intensity and excitement and being in that environment is what I'm looking forward to because I saw it. I mean, it was prevalent just watching you and Vince go back and forth and then Nora chime in, and then like all these ideas. And I'm just sitting there going, this is great. Like this is a team I want to be a part of. And that primarily was one of the reasons why I said yes to playing Freddy was the creative team involved. It's something, now that's something I have to be a part of, so.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's gonna end up where I know it can, because
I hope so
exciting.
Too. I hope so too, man. All right, let's head over to the chat room and take some questions. 118 people watching. I think at one point we had like 140, which was awesome. Great to see people tuning in. I know there's a couple of super chats, so let me just go back and get these. There were 2 super chats that came in. One from Tyler Trigg. Thank you very much, buddy. Really appreciate it. He says, how about Robert returns for Freddy versus Jason 2 and recast for new? Cecil, what do you think about that? Robert returning for a Freddy versus Jason 2, but if they were going to do standalone, they would recast somebody new.
I don't know. I think that I don't think they would do a Freddy versus Jason 2 before they do a new solo Nightmare on Elm Street movie.
I don't think so either.
Especially because Jason's been in development hell forever. They can't, right? I mean, they couldn't even if they wanted to. So
that's right.
I don't think that's the way they would choose to go, especially seeing, again, a lot of these guys coming back is gonna be a result of Halloween 2018 and now Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends, because they're going to see, oh shit, if they can work and they can work for multiple movies, let's plan a trilogy and, we'll bring him back because, it's a 60-plus-year-old Michael Myers, technically, what I mean?
And let's not fool ourselves. One of the reasons why that movie did so well and became the highest grossing slasher in motion picture history is not, and again, I'm not like, if you loved it and thought it was great, that's awesome. But it's not because it was an awesome movie. There are many variables at play. I mean, I've said on this channel, it's the first Halloween movie since 1989's Halloween 5 to be released in the month of October, which is just unbelievable to me. You had Jamie Lee Curtis returning, so there's the nostalgia factor. You had John Carpenter, returning, which is a big factor. You had Nick Castle, although they never said it was one shot in the movie. They tried to keep that, secret. There was a lot of things going on that sort of helped propel that to where it is. It'll be interesting to see how Kills and Ends does, but I agree that maybe, and it seems like a cheap trick, it seems like a cop-out, but maybe this nostalgia, and it's not just with Halloween, we're in this nostalgia era now, whether it's television or movies or, whatever it is. I mean, we're just, there's so many films coming back. I think Frasier is going to be making a return to TV or something. I mean, there's so many different, we're in this nostalgia era that maybe. Do you worry that the studios are going to think, okay, maybe the best way, and maybe they're right from a business, bottom line perspective, but do you think the right way to go for the future of Elm Street is to say, hey, let's do a direct sequel to 3 and pretend that 4, 5, and 6 don't exist. Or let's do a direct sequel to 1 and pretend that 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 don't exist, which I know some people would think was blasphemy, but they
want to bring Nancy back.
They do. And they just said that Halloween 2 doesn't exist from 1981, which is a huge fan favorite, which is arguably one of the best sequel. I mean, it connects directly to the original. So they say that. I mean, I could see them doing it. Do you think that's the right way to go?
Halloween 2 is a fan favorite, except for Slow-Mo Myers. I agree.
Right.
Yes. But no,
I mean, do you think pretending that 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 never happened and doing a direct sequel to A Nightmare on Elm Street?
It would bring a lot of people to the theater. It would bring a lot of people to the theater for sure.
Smart bottom line.
It is. And, some would say, I personally think Nancy's a better final girl than Jamie Lee Curtis.
I think she is, yeah.
Because she's way tougher. And, I just, Infiltrator, what's up?
Hey.
He's the
man.
Yeah, the man, the myth, the legend. I think that would likely be the smartest way they could go financially. I don't think that it's the best idea necessarily for a series reboot. You know what I mean? Because I think you're going to run into the issue that Nancy does. She said she only wants to do one more.
Right.
But again, but again, a lot hinges on maybe she sees that Jamie Lee can do 3 and she's like, I could do that.
Maybe.
That one showed them that they can come back. Or Halloween 2018 showed them that they could come back. If Kills and Ends are just as successful, if not more so, then I guarantee they're going to be like, age isn't what it used to be in Hollywood, dude. With your Tom Cruises out there and everyone just like looking forever young and forever agile, like, dudes at Tom Cruise's age 50 years ago looked like they were 80, you know what I mean, by today's standards. So like,
well, genes play a big part, but I get what you're saying. I think that, I mean, I just get, you're right. But I get worried if Kills and Ends do really well financially, it doesn't matter what you think of it personally, but if they do really well financially, would you not agree that it's almost a foregone conclusion that whoever is hired to do Elm Street in the writer's room with the executives, there's going to be a talk of, hey, why don't we do this? You know what I mean? Because I mean, it worked with Jamie Lee. It worked. If Kills and Ends don't do well, they might start thinking, well, okay, can we get one out of it?
I tell you, there isn't a franchise in the horror genre that would be even better suited for that same treatment than Nightmare on Elm Street.
I agree.
The dynamic and the fact that the main players are still around. I think that, you don't have that tete-a-tete that lasts from the very first Friday the 13th. You don't you kind of do with Chucky, depending on what Mancini does with his thing, because we do have Andy back and still facing off against Brad Dourif. So, but they've continued it for so long that they don't have to go back and do a sequel by negating the rest.
Right.
So that's the one thing that Mancini has with what he's done over the time. But, I think that, I think Nightmare, I think absolutely it's in the discussion. Right. I think the only way it wouldn't be the way that they would go would be if they got a director that had such a brilliant idea, with Flanagan's success with Dr. Sleep and everything else and the upcoming Blythe Manor, I'm sure, I think that there might be a chance for him to be that guy that says, I have an idea. And in fact, he tweeted that he has a Freddy idea when they first announced they were taking pitches. So his idea, I gather, would not be just a Halloween 2018 treatment.
Right. No, I don't think so either.
Unless it's a strong enough director that can say, no, we should do this instead, and has the clout to convince the studios, then all we're going to get is a Halloween 2018 treatment of it.
Right. Yeah, no, because I just can't see any sort of scenario where that's not an option. I mean, where, they look at this and they go, well, look what's happened here. If we bring back Nancy and we convince Robert, and you also have to remember too, that not so much Heather Langenkamp, although I know she does do cons, but Robert is more prominent at cons than I think Heather is. You know, you have to remember too that for an actor, especially, you know, when these cons in a lot of cases, they existed, but they didn't exist the way they do now 15 years ago. Even 10 years ago was a different story. And they were around, but certainly because of social media and because of these cons, it's like they have found a new lease on their careers. And a lot of the times what happens is especially in the case of Robert, the idea of going to these cons and being out there and speaking to the fans and being in the environment and Freddy, it ignites a fire in him that may have been long out for a long time. And, you know, it makes him think, well, you know what, maybe I can do this. You know, maybe I can do this. And he sees how excited you guys are at the cons. It gets him excited, right? He fuels off that excitement. So I can certainly see a scenario where they say, let's bring back Heather. I think Heather would do it. And I think Robert would do it. If the stars aligned. The question, I don't think the question, I think you would agree, is not would they do one more? I think they would. The question is, well, what
would it be
next?
Their swan song? Yeah.
Right.
Or
like
would they be okay with a trilogy plan?
Right. Or would they say, let's do one more and then let's do, and if that's successful, let's do a final one. And then you have the Elm Street, you know, trilogy. I could see that, you know, but then if that's really successful, you're always left with, well, then what? You know,
well, listen, with any of these any of these slashers, you're going to have a then what?
You are,
you know, because they're forever.
But maybe
luckily
that's when
for us, they're forever in the zeitgeist. You know,
that's
and they're
right.
always going to have a following.
That's right.
Because
maybe that's when you move to television.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think. I just honestly and before we did this stream, I didn't necessarily agree that Elm Street was right for a series. Yeah. But when it started to break down in my head as I was talking about it, I'm like, actually, it's kind of the perfect place for it.
It could be,
but
yeah.
It's not the perfect place for a sequel. It's the perfect place to relaunch it all. And then boom, you can have a new season, you know, with new kids coming in and you know the old ones coming back. And you can even pass a few years, you know what I mean?
That's right.
Go 5 years in between seasons, so it's a new crop, and there's one that's hung on, and it's like the Dewey from Scream that's still laying out, you know, whatever. You know, but
there's
as
a lot
movie,
of potential there.
You can't. You have to sequelize in the movie. You have to, if you're rebooting, it has to be on a series.
I tend to, I didn't think much of it before this stream, but now that you're talking about it, an Elm Street series has a lot of potential, a lot of untapped potential that is sort of exciting to me. Super chat from Da Bears Live 96 says, Cecil, I live in Arizona in the Phoenix. Is it Mesa?
Mesa, yep, that's where I'm at.
Mesa area. I will work for free on the production in whatever capacity necessary. Acting, floor sweeper, name it. Is there a contact, Cecil? Are you taking resumes from people?
I mean, we're
maybe you might be able to send.
Yeah, we're still trying to fill out some of the spots, and depending on things, there's not many things left, but maybe. You know, let me. I have to obviously get some information and what you've worked on in the past and things like that, because we're not trying to, no offense to anyone, but we're trying to make this as professional a set as possible without being, you know, studio run, as professional and indie set as we can. And so we don't want to just necessarily have people that have never been on a set before,
right? Because
you don't know necessarily where to stand, what to do, where to act. And we don't really have a budget to hire someone that can be a wrangler, that kind of thing. But if you reach out at the we have our email, thehorrorshow666@yahoo.com. You can go to the channel and it's in the description box of any of our videos, so send me an email over there and we can discuss it at the very least.
Cool. Awesome. Infiltrator, generous super chat. Thank you, buddy. Really appreciate that. He says, hello, Dave and Cecil and everyone else. Late to the stream. If you or someone else were to recreate Freddy's Dead, the final nightmare, how would you want or have wanted the franchise to end? Love hanging out with you guys. Man, that's a good question. How would I have wanted? You know what? Maybe in some weird, well, I don't know. Maybe in some way, I think if you're going to go as bonkers as they did with Freddy's Dead, although I think you, if I'm not mistaken, I think you kind of like the idea of him having a daughter that sort of rises up to kind of defeat him. I may have tinkered around with the idea of figuring out a way to bring Nancy back, but maybe it's Nancy and Freddy in a dream world. Maybe she's dead, he's dead, and you bring her back, and there's a fight to the real dematerializing death. You know what I mean? That might have been interesting to me. Because listen, if you're going to take it to where you took it, I don't think bringing Nancy back in a dream world where they're both dead is really that far-fetched at that point. You know what I mean? I don't know. Did you see it any differently?
No. So you've basically hit on something that was we did, I think, 8 different episodes reviewing all the Freddy comic books that are out there.
Oh, okay.
And one of them is a series. It's a 6-issue series called Nightmares on Elm Street. And that was basically a sequel to 3 and 5. So it brought a lot of people back. It brought back the doctor, actually both the head doctor, the old lady head doctor of part 3, as well as Neil. He's back as well. And
Bill Maher.
yeah, basically. And then it brought back a few of the survivors as well. And they brought back Nancy because what happened was, at the end of 3, they basically went with the continuity where Patricia Arquette, as Nancy's dying, says, "I'm going to dream you into a beautiful dream." And so in the comic series, she exists in what's called the beautiful dream. She's called it the beautiful dream, and she exists as the anti-Freddy. Like she's kind of the good representation of good dreams. And so they ultimately do have they don't, but they should have had one final confrontation where he's the master of bad dreams and she's the master of good dreams. And so she lives in the beautiful dream that Patricia Arquette dreamed her into at the end of 3.
Dude, I'm sitting here. Okay, I had no idea about that, okay? I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, I'm thinking of what Freddy's Dead was, right? And how sensational and carnival-y and bonkers it was. That's so much better. Like it bookends, because I mean, look, is it a little sensational and kind of, this is the good dream and the bad dream, and this is kind of okay. But if you're gonna go, I mean, look at where the series,
they make him a demon anyway. You might as well make devil and angel.
I mean, maybe if that had been proposed, if Nancy had died at the end of the first movie and that had been proposed for a sequel, I might be like, I don't know if it kind of fits, because the first movie's kind of serious, right? And maybe that's not quite. But where the series went to, I'm thinking to myself, that's a far better, more organic bookend to this entire thing. Like, I actually really like that. And then they have a final duel, you know what I mean?
And Neil gets to see her again because they had that budding romance.
Right.
So you can play with that. They get to have their goodbye before she disappears into the beautiful dream forever at the end,
Yeah, that's actually a really good idea.
Or he probably dies in the thing and joins her in the beautiful dream at the end or something like that.
Right. Yeah, that would be nice. That'd be a nice thing. Yeah. Because then they actually end up together.
Get a happy together. Even though she's dead and gone, she gets a resolution.
Now, would you leave the end of the movie, leave the story with a little bit? Would you plant that tiny little seed of doubt that he was still out there? Now, I don't mean something obvious.
Something. Give it the same way they did in 3. The light in the house turns on at the end.
Right. Yes.
In the model, or at the end of 5 when she flicks the coin and you see Freddy's reflection in the fountain before the coin hits the water.
Right.
That it's got to have something like that. It's got to have something. Freddy's always there. That's what those were. It wasn't. There's a sequel coming. It wasn't. Those weren't intended to be the Marvel post-credit sequences saying there's another one coming, guys. No, that was just saying Freddy's dead for now, but he's always out there ready to come back. And that's, you got to do that, man.
Cool.
100%.
Cool. Super chat from Brandon Barry. Oh, did I miss another one here? I don't think I did. No. Super chat from Brandon Barry. Thank you, buddy. Says, Cecil, will we see anything on Dylan's new Nightmare at Mad Monster in Arizona in June?
That's a very good question. I think it's mid-June, and so that would only be 2 weeks after we film. So I don't know if I could cobble together anything that quickly that I'd want to show, because I guarantee we wouldn't have had time to color correct and all that stuff. But there might, maybe we could get a nice image of you as Freddy to finally start advertising around or something like that, or at least a silhouette image or something, so we're not fully revealing you before the movie, but we're getting you as Freddy instead of our stand-in, because those are the only Freddy images we have right now.
Yeah, when I'm down there and I'm in full gear, we got to remember to do that. We got to remember to take some nice nice photos, you know.
It's in the plan.
Cool. And certain and with, you know, Miko and everybody, you know what I mean, and really kind of that'd be cool.
You're gonna be a photo bitch for a little while. I hope you realize
damn
that.
Fucking right, bitch. Fucking right. I'll be your photo bitch. I'll be your photo bitch. All right, we'll go for a few more minutes here. Let's see. Let me go to the chat room here. The man.
Someone said you guys should do a Comic-Con panel with Nora. If this gets together well enough, like, I would love to put us together for a panel at like San Diego Con or wherever we could actually get in. Because I think with this project, we might actually be able to make it in to one of those things.
Maybe.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Let me see here. The Man Hammer AR-15 says, Sir Dave, in your most humblest of humble opinions, do you think that nostalgia is indeed cunning, baffling, and insidious? I don't know if it's well, I mean, I think anything can be insidious. I just think that psychologically, from a psychological point of view, tapping into the childhood nostalgia of people is just brilliant marketing. You know, I mean, it's just, we all loved something growing up. We're all emotionally attached to that cartoon or that property or that doll or that stuffed animal or that movie. And I think at the end of the day, I think if it's a culture, if it's not necessarily niche and it's more broad, like you know, something like well, not necessarily niche, but not necessarily not niche, but if it's something that has a following, it's brilliant marketing. So do I think it's cunning? It can be, yeah. I don't know, Cecil, do you see that the same way?
I'm sure the studios think it's cunning.
Yes, I'm sure they do.
It's now less so at this point, but
that's right.
You know, it is what it is. Nostalgia is something quite frankly, nostalgia used to just be nostalgia. Now nostalgia is big business.
That's right.
And that's right. You know, I don't begrudge people for wanting to look. We're all just screaming and crying on our way to the grave. You know what I mean? So I don't think there's anything wrong with allowing yourself to revel in the things that made you happy growing up, because adulting is hard, guys.
It is.
And back then, we didn't have those concerns. And so whether we realize it or not, when we're watching something that we liked as a kid, we're also tapping into, you know, the way we felt, then more so than the actual content. We're tapping into the underlying feelings that we had as a kid, because or as a young adult or whatever it was, when it comes down to nostalgia, it makes us feel those feels again. And so I don't think as long as it's done well, and there's obviously good examples and bad examples, but that's the case with any movie.
That's right.
Or any medium, really. You know, I mean, Jesus, Eminem, you could call nostalgic, and he's put out 2 albums in the last 2 years that are unbelievably good. They're so good, and the dude's been around for 20 years at this point, and it's you know, stuff can be nostalgic and still be good.
100%.
You know, you still just got to judge it on a case-by-case basis.
Yep.
Ultimately, if you have to try and boil down what these people's concerns are, is that, well, you could be doing something else with that money. It's like, first off, you're not going to be able to tell Hollywood how to spend their money. Second off, they have so much, you're not getting less of the other stuff. It's just more going straight to VOD. You're just not looking for it in the right places.
Yeah, there's there's a, you know, the thing you hear a lot of people say is that, you know, Hollywood doesn't make anything original. They make more original content and more original movies than they do anything else. But the problem is that it's not big business, right? Nostalgia and sequels and reboots are big business because you're emotionally attached already. They've got you already, right? They've got you before they've even made the movie. You know what I mean? And that's why it's so important. I mean, there's so many original movies and shows being made.
There's actually more now than ever.
That's what I just said.
So many outlets,
right?
That you just can't. It's hard to identify them all.
That's right. And because you don't already have an emotional attachment for it, you either have to discover it on your own. You have to know somebody who you trust, who's watching it, who can say, "Hey, dude, you got to watch this." I mean, that's what happened with, you know, Stranger Things, right? You had this thing come out, right? And people were like, "Dude, you got to watch it." That's what happened. I was like, "Stranger what?" Okay, I sat down, I'm like, "Holy snap and crap," right? Like, this is amazing, you know. And
Mandalorian in an age of Star Wars fatigue.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. So, you know, it's there's a lot of original content out there. It's just that you're not already attached to it or know about it. So you have to discover it, search for it, look for it, know somebody who's watching it and all that kind of jazz. But yeah, it's big business, you know, as you said. And if it's done right and done well, I agree with you. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But there are always cases and always going to be cases where stuff feels a little on the nose, a little shoehorned in, you know, a little unnecessary. But, you know, when it's done right, it can be pretty special.
There's the other side of the coin that no one ever really seems to talk about, is that nostalgic throwbacks that we're getting nowadays, they're also all getting the opportunity to be one-upped. Like, you know what I mean? They're all like one example right off the top of my head, maybe not the best, but still an example. Are You Afraid of the Dark? Right. That was a series in the 90s on Nickelodeon that was an anthological thing where a group of kids gets together around a campfire and they tell one or two stories and that don't involve any of them. Now, in 2019, we got a new Are You Afraid of the Dark that was only 3 episodes that were each an hour long instead of, you know, a series of half-hour unrelated episodes that was actually about the kid. Like the first episode, the kids get together and they tell a story, and then the story that gets told starts to come to life. And so the actual 3-episode series are about those kids, the campfire kids, and how they deal with that, instead of just an anthological story about something that doesn't have to do with any of them. So you can hit nostalgic and raise it a level.
That's
you know
right.
what I mean? And there's the 80s, these movies, these slasher movies, taking them as the example, it was grainy pan and scan shit. And now we get a beautiful, wonderful, widescreen, crisp, clear version of them. So we would never get those were it not for the nostalgic, you know, desire.
It's a good point. It's a good point. Yeah. No, that is a good point. That is a good point. Super chat from Frank Riker. He says, Cecil, if you had the Hollywood budget, what would you want to do in the film that you couldn't?
I would have secured everyone that I wanted to reprise all the roles that I wanted to be reprised, considering it's a sequel. Yeah, awesome. And I would make it a full length feature instead of a short, and I would you know, make sure all the kills and special effects were where they would need to be. I would still be the same story, just because this Dylan's New Nightmare is a part 1. You know, there's at least a 4-episode, if not 5-episode story to be told that, when put together, would be an entire film. So I would just make that entire film with all the players that I would want to make it with. And
knowing what I know about those potential next installments, it's like mind-blowing. Let's just put it that way. Sweet Tea super chat to the channel, my friend. Well, thank you, Sweet Tea. Really appreciate that. Really appreciate that. Let me see here. Let me scroll, see if I can get some people. As always, new people checking in here that I haven't seen before. Let me see. Gamer O'Night says, just take Craven's core ideas and start fresh, he says. That's what he would do. Jason Myers says, hopefully Dave wears the trench coat and combat boots like in Wes Craven's new Nightmare. I don't know. Cecil, are we allowed to say anything about whether I will or won't be? What's the story?
The combat boots may be less likely because they're very, very leathery and showy. So the combat boots may be less likely, but there may be a jacket on the horizon. We'll see what happens.
There may be a jacket, folks. Let me see here. Julian Salgado, I think I'm saying that right. Hey, Dave and Cecil, what are your thoughts on the new Conjuring title, The Devil Made Me Do It? I don't hate it or anything. I don't know if I would have called the movie that. I miss the old days where you could just say 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. I miss and then have a subtitle. I don't know. It doesn't. I gotta see the movie. I don't know. I enjoyed the first Conjuring. I thought it was actually one of the better horror films of the last decade. The Conjuring 2 I liked. I think Juan has good horror directing sensibilities, so he directed the sequel. I thought it was, I didn't think it was as good as the first, but definitely he brought his Juanism to it, and it was fun. The third one's not being directed by him, so I'm very curious, although it still stars the same people. So I'm curious to see how this feels, what the execution is like in this third installment, because as we know, traditionally, the more you make, you don't usually get fantastic, although there are, Elm Street 3, but I don't know. Cecil, how do you feel about the title? How do you feel about Conjuring 3? Are you optimistic, pessimistic?
I think the title is a direct result of their own success and false equivalencies. Because you see the success of Annabelle Creation,
right,
and Annabelle Comes Home, and the ones like that, rather than calling them Annabelle 2 and 3,
right,
and Ouija Origin of Evil instead of Ouija 2.
Right.
I think it's becoming a bit of an Ouroboros where it's the snake eating its own tail, where they're like, well, these are successful, let's just continue with that, in spite of the fact that The Conjuring 2 was very successful, and now you already established a number system with the second one. Right. So why change it now? It feels weird. It's going to make it feel like more of an offshoot than a direct sequel. And already Annabelle Comes Home was The Conjuring 3 because it had the Warrens and took place in their house with the weird room. That should have technically been The Conjuring 3. So
I agree with that.
They've kind of fucked everything up at that point as far as that goes. So while the title sucks, it's not surprising. But yeah, I'm still going to watch the movie because I like the Conjuring movies. Although we're getting more and more diminishing returns. La Llorona is something that I've wanted for a long time, because being in Arizona, Mexican folklore has made it up here for a long time now. So I've known about La Llorona for years, not to be a La Llorona hipster, but I have. And so I was always looking for a Wailing Woman movie, and we finally get a big budget one, and it's not as good as it should be. The Nun, that character was terrifying in The Conjuring 2, but they basically they made it such a lame version of what that character could have been, and then just took the ending straight from Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight to end The Nun, and I was like, well, that's just garbage. What are we doing here?
Yeah, I always thought The Nun was unnecessary. I understand that she's got a great look, I get that, and she was terrifying in The Conjuring 2, right? It was part 2, I think she was in. I get it, but I always found it strange that they were taking her and making an entire story and film about her when her whole purpose of existing was just for the character in The Conjuring 2 anyway. The character was a utility player. It was to help sort of propel this subtext, I guess, of the Conjuring 2, helping it to propel it forward. I didn't think there was enough meat on. I get that she looks cool. I get that, but I didn't think that I don't think that it's the same with Annabelle. I don't think, now I'm not, I know that they have some, but I just think that these little things in here, oh, that looks cool, we can make an entire film about that. It just doesn't work for me. And the Nun was garbage, and it was garbage.
And the casting, the casting threw things off too by casting the sister of, you know, Vera Farmiga, Taissa Farmiga. So now
Right.
people are looking for familial connections when you're not putting them there. And it's like,
Right.
what are you guys even doing? Like,
Right. I think
there's weird little missteps that this whole thing is taking. It's
right. I think
strange.
the Nun should have just remained in The Conjuring 2 and have been that moment where people go, oh, here comes the Nun moment. You know what I mean? And now there's this whole other mythology around. I just didn't think it was warranted. It wasn't needed. And I feel the same way about Annabelle. I don't think that she was, I don't think it was interesting enough. I don't think the Nun is interesting enough to warrant an entire potential. Of course, they're not going to do it now, but setting up a series. I just don't think it's there.
What they should have done is take the convent, make a movie about a convent that's being tortured by the demon that was shown to be under the nun in The Conjuring 2. At the end, when the nun gets banished, it turns into a demon. So let's have a movie about the nunnery or the convent that is being tormented by the demon. And at the very end, it takes the form of the final nun that it defeats and becomes the nun that we see in The Conjuring.
Right. And then you just leave it at that.
Yeah. And boom, that's it.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, that's better. That's better because yeah, I like that. And then you leave it at that. You know, you don't need to go. Of course, they wouldn't leave it at that if it was successful. No, but artistically, I think that would be a good spot to leave it. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Yeah, I just never found. You know, when I was like, oh, of course they are. They're making a nun movie. I remember thinking, but her purpose was what? It doesn't make any sense to make a nun movie. I mean, I found it very strange. And same with Annabelle. I know there's some people that don't like the first Annabelle, but kind of like the second Annabelle. I haven't seen Annabelle Comes Home, so I don't have a thought on it. I know the Warrens are back, and I know people who have seen it who have said exactly what you've said, Cecil, which is it's pretty much The Conjuring 3. Why wasn't this just The Conjuring 3? And it almost bookends a trilogy, you know, if you think about it, right? Because you start with Annabelle, you end with Annabelle, and that might have been a nice sort of tight trilogy there, and you kind of have this thing. I didn't think I like Annabelle. I thought she was cool for its thing in the original film. I didn't think there was enough for a series around this fucking doll. Holy shit! But boy, was I wrong. I kind of felt the same way John did. John, yeah, first name basis. John Carpenter did with Halloween. You know, he famously said there was no more to tell. He was like, boy, was I fucking wrong. You know. Anyway, we'll take one last question here for Cecil, and then we'll skedaddle. So let me see here. See, I always like to get people.
While you're looking for that, allow me to just give a recommendation and an avoid recommendation.
100%.
For two brand new movies.
Sure.
So we reviewed in the last 2 days. We reviewed The Turning, which is the new big theater release today, and then the Color Out of Space, which is a independent release that is the new movie starring Nicolas Cage that's directed by Richard Stanley. And if you don't know, Richard Stanley is the one who notoriously directed The Island of Dr. Moreau amidst a ton of crazy things happening. There was even an entire documentary made about the failure of that movie called Lost Soul.
Fascinating.
And he also made Hardware and another movie called Dust Devil. So he's been out of the limelight since 1990, 3 or 1 even, maybe when Dr. Moreau came out, or 5, I don't know, somewhere in the early 90s. Right. He made this movie that is a Lovecraftian-inspired horror movie starring Nicolas Cage. And we went and saw it, and we were pretty much blown away by it. Like, Fuego thought that Cage went a little too Cage at times, but I believe there's an actual reason for it in the story. And it's just a fantastic movie with some really, really great, at times, almost Thing level special effects, special makeup effects, and there's both digital and practical effects, and it's got, you know, a lot of really cool stuff going on in it. It's a very fantastic, well-paced movie. But The Turning, on the other hand, I suggest you avoid at all costs because it's all one act. I said Underwater was all third act, right. And The Turning is all act one. Okay. And it's so screwed up that they didn't even know how to end it, or they ran out of budget or something, where literally someone just goes, and then they cut to another shot, not cut to black, but cut to another shot, and then credits start to roll, and you're like, whoa, what? There was no ending here. So Cecil! Yeah, I do like cats. I have 2 cats. Cats
are awesome.
Avoid the turning. Go seek out Color Out of Space. Color Out of Space is only in limited release, and then it hits VOD next month. So definitely put it down. It's a very worthwhile horror. So that's a good horror and a bad horror.
Cool. I made a tweet yesterday about The Turning, and it looked like a run of the mill. I just, I'm stunned. See, so I am so shocked that The Turning turned out to. It looked amazing, so unique and different, and those little footprints, on the. I've never seen that before in any horror movie ever in the history. It's brilliant. Those wet footprints from the ghost.
If that gets to you, man, wait till you see the wispy ghosts in the mirrors.
Oh, right. Wait, there's ghosts in mirrors?
Ghosts in mirrors, and they're wispy, like smoke-like.
How come we've never thought of this before?
It's
my
groundbreaking.
God.
I think, honestly, I just didn't like the ending because it was over my head or something.
Yeah, maybe.
That's gotta be it.
I'll wait till it comes to streaming to check it out on a day that I'm not feeling well.
If there's free flicks, I would stream off of free flicks.
Okay, cool. All right, last question here from somebody I've never seen in here before. Cool. Who is she? Says, do you think if Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and 3 written exactly the same way, switched places in the Nightmare on Elm Street timeline, people would like Freddy's Revenge more? So the sequel is actually Dream Warriors, and the third part is actually Freddy's Revenge. Off the top of my head, I'm going to say, do I think they would like... do I think they would like Freddy's Revenge more? I'm going to say no, because that feels like an odd place to end the series. As far as... I think if you were to take it as just 3 movies, as unorthodox and maybe a little black sheep as Elm Street 2 feels, I think it's able to find a new place in people's hearts because it is the second chapter. And you have that third chapter that really does bookend the Nancy story well. I think if I don't know, Freddy's Revenge feels like an awkward third chapter. I don't know. Do you feel the same way, Cecil? Do you see it differently at all? Or
so to me, they look, if you line them up, they would be like stairs, right? You got Nightmare 1, and then you get Nightmare 2, which is like it's raising the bar on the craziness that Freddy can do and the scariness, and then Nightmare 3 is just a little bit higher as well. And now Freddy's starting to get a little bit silly, but he's still really scary. But the bigness of it is much more, right?
Right.
They're really delving into, like, the bus was the biggest thing in 2, but now there's a lot more big things in 3. So I feel like if they had literally gone 1 to 3 to 2, it would have felt like a step backwards after 3.
Yeah.
After a fashion. And I don't think it would have felt really off kilter, whereas now it feels like an actual natural progression of the series.
That's a good point.
It feels like instead of stairs, it would have been a podium, right? It would have been the low 1, and then 3, and then 2. Like it wouldn't be as natural a walk if you tried to walk across it.
And narratively as well, like I said, it's an awkward story. It's not even connected to the first 2. So from a narrative perspective, it's an odd place to end the trilogy as well. So it's not only, as you point out, a sort of a step down off the podium in terms of visual aesthetic and style and sort of the bigness, but now it's like, who's this guy? Who's, Jesse and Lisa, and what is this? What does that have to? It's kind of it would still feel like a standalone movie that was an awkward third chapter. I think anyway. But
I agree.
Yeah. All right, folks, that is going to do it for Cecil and I and me here on episode 9 of McRae Live. I want to thank Cecil for coming on here and being my very first guest. We had a few technical hiccups throughout the stream, but the stream seemed to, the stream was just kind of saying, hey, I just want to let you guys fucking know I'm in charge. Okay, so I'm just going to let you know. I'm going to fuck some shit up only for a couple of seconds, and I'll let you go, okay? I just want to let you know that really you don't run the shit here. But hey, it worked out all right. Cecil,
real quick, we just got one last second super chat from Brooke Lou saying, just because you're both amazing, for $14. And Frank says, fun fact, this is Dave's longest live stream ever on McRae Live. So I think having another person to talk to definitely contributed to that.
I think so. Is it really? It can't be by much, but maybe it is. Maybe it is. Frank's keeping track. He's got got the portfolio and notes. Brooke, thank you so much. Really appreciate you supporting the channel that way. I really do appreciate it. So yeah, that is going to do it for me. I will be back Monday night on episode 54, I think, of Two Dudes and some 54, 50, yeah, something like that, of Two Dudes and Some Bullshit. It looks like we'll be watching Tremors as opposed to Stir of Echoes. Yeah, we did that movie. It's fantastic. We did a poll last week of what movie do you want Tony and I to give some commentary on, and we put It Follows or Stir of Echoes, which is fantastic. It Follows won, and then we thought, okay, well, we'll give Stir of Echoes another chance because it's a really underrated, great movie. And so we put it up against Tremors. Well, Tremors is just annihilating Stir of Echoes, so and not surprisingly so. So it looks like we'll be watching Tremors on Monday night, and then I'll be back with episode 10 of McRae Live on Tuesday morning at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that is going to do it for me. You can follow Cecil on his Instagram at you can see down there below his box. It says at the Horror Show 666, and his Twitter at Horror Show 666. So Cecil, any last words you want to say?
No, I mean, obviously the YouTube channel over there, we just put up our review of The Turning this morning and Color Out of Space yesterday, so you can go watch those full reviews if you want. But yeah, thank you guys, or thank you, Dave, very much for having me on. This was a lot of fun. I always love to talk Freddy. And if you guys liked any of the ideas that I spouted off during this, keep in mind, I came up with Dylan's New Nightmare too. So chances are you'll probably enjoy that as well once it's all done. So
yeah, exactly. All right, guys, we'll talk to you guys soon. Cheers.